Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. It is going to be a fantastic show here tonight. We're going to step out a little bit. We're going to step into a little of the woo and get into paranormal and vampires here tonight, stepping into the unknown with our guest, Keith Evans, who will be joining us here shortly. Let me go ahead and see who came in first here, courtesy of Race Fan. Race Fan shows Race Fan with the gold back on top, Kitty Catty Whack with the silver, and Linda with the bronze. Appreciate you guys coming on in nice and early and coming into the Space Out Radio After Hours radio show. Let me see who else is coming on in here this evening. Race Fan says, on this day, 1974, John Lennon reported seeing a UFO that he described as an archetypal flying saucer with lights from his new apartment at 9 p.m. EST. Appreciate that. That's some awesome knowledge. Thanks for coming on in as well. Who else do we have out there? We have Roger Murray dropping knowledge as well. August 23rd, 1974. Yeah, former Beatle John Lennon witnessed UFO outside of his apartment in New York City, Manhattan. You guys are on the same page. That's synchronicity, Race Fan and Roger Murray. So appreciate you keeping us informed. We do have Mel WD-40 coming on in, getting us lubed up and ready to go for the show. Appreciate you guys coming on in. Who else? We have the Jaquetta. Hey, the Jaquetta, thanks for coming on in. We have Road Flare. Thanks for showing up here tonight. We have Bim Jim. I see you, Bim Jim. Thanks for coming on in here. We also have Dep Nas. Appreciate you coming on in. Cosmic Joe, I see you as well. Joshua, Undead Jed, thanks for coming on in. Let's see. KAS, I see you. Let's see here. I think we are actually pretty current here. We are current. Let me go back, make sure I was Paramarv. Did I see Paramarv? I'm skipping through here pretty quickly. No Paramarv yet. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get the podcast side started Welcome to Space Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. Tonight's going to be a fantastic show. We're talking paranormal and vampires stepping into the unknown with Keith Evans for hours 1 and 2. Some Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries in hour 3. UFO and Weird News, guys. Let's go. Let's get ready to go. As we welcome in some buzzer beaters. FAP saying, hey, guys, appreciate you showing up. Joshua, appreciate you coming on in. And I think that might, okay, Jerry Elmore at the buzzer as we get ready to go ahead and start the radio side here, guys. Let's go. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. And tonight, we're broadcasting on our terrestrial affiliates across North America, plus digitally on digital platforms all around the world. Don't forget, you can access our archives. They're absolutely free. YouTube.com/The Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the SOR Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, you can rock out to the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Dahl. And oh, so much more. It's going to be a fantastic show here. Tonight we have Keith Evans joining us, talking paranormal and vampires, stepping into the unknown. And we're not going to waste any time, guys. We're going to go ahead and get right on into the show as we bring up our guest for the night, Mr. Keith Evans. How are you, Keith?
Hey, how are you? I'm good.
Yes, doing well, doing well. Paranormal and vampires. I talk about vampires because it has been one topic that I've been interested in since a child. And, every Halloween as a young child, I went to find the plastic Dracula teeth. I literally wanted to change my teeth to Dracula teeth for real, like real life. So this has been a big passion of mine. There's a lot of people out there, and truthfully, myself as well. Vampires, Dracula. What's the difference? There's definitely got to be a difference there, and I'd love to hear that from you. But let's start out with what got you started. What got you interested in maybe not just vampires, but just the paranormal in general? Have you had any experiences? Let's start there.
Well, what got me interested in the paranormal was the fact that I was a somewhat of an empath. I could feel other people's joy, certain joy that they had in things. For instance, like one of my relatives had owned a house. It had been in my mother's side of the family probably since about 1850. And they had some really nice wainscoting. That's the clear finish where you can see the wooden grain. And to me, it was just beautiful. And it just made me happy every time I saw it. Of course, my mother thought I was a little bit weird. But anyway, I was feeling the happiness that this wooden grain had, brought to family members in the past. I was feeling the pride that they had by having that type of wooden grain on the inside of their house. I'm sure for the time from the 1850s, it probably cost a pretty penny to have that type of wood inside of your home. And that's why they were probably so proud of it. And I could feel that. But everyone thought for a 4-year-old, I was a little bit out of place by feeling the way I was feeling. And I didn't feel that way at all. I thought that I was just right on the money and I was just picking up on something that they were unable to pick up on. So that's how I first got interested in the paranormal. I knew there was something out there more than what most people were claiming existed. And as far as vampires, I started thinking about vampires, I guess, about late elementary or early middle school, there was a program on TV. It was a British sitcom in the late 60s, early 70s called Dark Shadows.
Mm.
And uh, Barnabas was my hero. And I always wanted to figure out how he did what he did. And that brought me to writing my book, Vampires Dead or Alive. And no, I don't really enjoy writing a book. I don't really enjoy writing essays, but I do enjoy letting others know about my, point of view concerning vampires. And it was a point of view that no other person that I know of had ever written about. So I wanted to write something so brand new. Of course, it's the same vampire and the same historical vampire characteristics, but no one had ever went out of their way to try to explain how a vampire do what they do. To me, they're like superheroes. I didn't really have a superhero like Popeye the Sailor Man or Hercules or Batman or Superman. I always liked Barnabas Collins. He was the vampire on the British sitcom Dark Shadows. So he was my childhood, if you want to say comic book or TV hero. And I always, wanted an opportunity to explain how Barnabas and other vampires do what they do. And as I went further and further in school, I have a 4-year degree in chemistry. As I took more classes, astronomy classes, chemistry classes, physics classes, excuse me, that allowed me to say, hey, maybe that's how the vampire did what he did. So, for instance, in my book, I take a look at how vampires shapeshift. And I feel what they do, they bend space and time. And I'm a firm believer in reincarnation. I think our soul has been in and out of many different types of species, probably species throughout the universe for probably thousands, if not millions of years. So a vampire can bend space and time locally just for themselves, not for anyone else that's in the room, and then go back to a time where maybe they were just a soul. Maybe they didn't have a biological body, and then they just vanish. Or they could
Well,
go
let's,
back to a time where they were a bat, and then they would turn into a bat and fly away.
yeah,
What was your
there
question?
you definitely have an interesting perspective on vampires, and that was awesome. And we're gonna actually get into that. What was the what was it that interested you in vampires? Like, what characteristics? What was it that you admired about Dracula or vampires? Did you ever want to be one yourself, or how did you approach that?
Well, I think there's probably a little bit of vampire in all of us. I feel that vampires have probably been on Earth for a long period of time, that they're probably extraterrestrial. There might be some vampires that are actually from Earth, but I think the first vampires were probably extraterrestrial. And I think that they interbreeded with humans. In fact, the vampires might have been uh, the intelligent beings that manipulated our DNA so that we were more like them so they could, you know, breed with us. And if you know anything about vampires, you know that they can't be exposed to our star's sunlight because it'll denature their DNA and kill them. So I guess they had every motivation to try to interbreed with humans and make humans more like them so they could have offspring that could be at least be exposed to some of our starlight, some of the sun's light without becoming immediately denatured. And denatured is just the unraveling of your DNA, which will kill you.
So when you come in a process, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering how vampires and spaceships or spacecraft intersect and how they relate. In your mind, how are you coming to these conclusions? Like, what about, your looking into vampires over the years has made you feel that they could be, potentially in the extraterrestrial category?
Well, I feel that if a vampire can spend hundreds of years locked away in a coffin and survive that, they can certainly survive, you know, a long time traveling from, say, one universe to the other universe, and that's one reason why I feel they're very durable. Um, all they have to do if they get sick and tired of riding on their spaceship, they can just dematerialize. They don't have to deal with it anymore. So that's one reason why I feel that they're just very durable species. If anyone could survive long-term space travel, they can pretty much just go into their own little dream state coma and escape whatever boredom that they have on the spaceship. If I guess the chain of command on the spaceship allows them to do that.
So you have, obviously a lot of people have grown up watching, the pop culture version of vampires, which would be Interview with the Vampire, Dracula, the old film. Where in the history of Dracula are you able to point to some historical references that could be interpreted as maybe related to extraterrestrial or something, outside of just what we understand vampires to be? Is there anything in the history that you can point to that says, yeah, okay, that could be potentially, them saying it's an extraterrestrial?
Well, I don't know if I could point to anything concerning Dracula, but I think vampires in general, uh, they're definitely, there's no other species like that on Earth. So that I know of. So the they'd have to come from someplace else. I mean, they're so different. I mean, how many species on Earth can send messages telepathically like a vampire can? You
Okay.
know, um, there's I don't know of any species that can quickly shapeshift or dematerialize the way a vampire can.
Mm.
I know certain animals like can go from a worm to a butterfly, but it takes time biologically. So I think that in itself would, lead anyone to suspect that they were from another planet, that they were extraterrestrial.
Yeah, I kind of like that actually. I'm just looking at that because a lot of people are like, okay, what are the comparisons? And when you talk about telepathy, okay, I could definitely see that. That kind of just falls right in there. And then shape shifting, which should be another one. These are definitely two pieces of the phenomena that we identify with for other things. So when you apply that to Dracula, it kind of makes sense. It kind of, but what is the? I'm not up on the full knowledge on the origins of Dracula. What do they? What have? Do you know anything about that? What have they written about, like the origins? If you were to go read a book about Dracula.
Well, he was actually a man who uh, was in Eastern Europe, and apparently his family was in charge. They were like lived in a castle. I guess his father was king, his father was a ruler, and apparently his father and the rest of the family were killed, and he was put into prison as a teenager or a young, at least a teenage or pre-teenage boy, and he was put through a lot, and he vowed if he ever got free, he was going to get revenge. Uh, I know more about that. There are so many versions of TV movie Dracula that to me is just kind of like Hollywood showing you entertainment. But as far as what I've read about him historically, he just lived a very tortured life. I don't really think the gentleman himself uh, was probably a vampire. I think he had been abused, and he turned out to be a real good abuser of other people too. I mean, to scare people away and to intimidate people, he took, the men that had been killed, or at least if they weren't dead, they were going to die. He would put a sharpened pole, you know, between their legs and drive it all the way through and come out around their neck, and then put them alongside the road. So if anyone else was traveling along to his castle who wanted to give him a hard time, they would say, well, that's what happened to this guy, and he gave Dracula a hard time. So I'm not really 100% convinced that the historical Dracula was a vampire. If anything, it modern gave us a modern version of what we know to be a vampire. But I'm not really sure if that person was a vampire. If anything, he was just a horribly abused person that grew up to be an adult who had power, and he dished out a lot of abuse to everyone else. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at some of the history on it, and I'm just seeing that there definitely have been comparisons throughout history to from Dracula to aliens, which is actually eye opening because I had not ever considered it to be a thing, but it was very interesting in the way that you were posing it. I watched the previous interview you were in, and the whole idea of Dracula being more than just I mean, because it truthfully, it would make more sense because when we talk about all of the unknowns under the phenomena, which is Bigfoot, aliens, cryptids, all like 50, 100 different cryptids, that maybe something like that could fall in the category. I mean, it just makes sense. There's a lot of the characteristics that do line up, and so I would have to look more into the history of Dracula to see what if some of those events could be explained as extraterrestrial or not. It would be interesting to know because that would be a hybrid human, essentially. We talk about hybrid humans when we talk about humans interact or hybridization with aliens. So why couldn't
Right.
Dracula be a result of that as well? That makes
Well,
sense.
it's a possibility, but I would say that vampires in general are a combination of cryptids and also extraterrestrials, and also fall into the paranormal category. I think they're like a triple whammy. They fit into all three of those categories.
And so, talking about your book, what does your book focus on? What aspect of this? Like, are you able to kind of go into some of the things you talk about in Vampires Dead or Alive?
Well, each chapter is based on a certain ability of a vampire. And for instance, I look at uh, how a vampire became who they are. And it could have been certain mutations that take place in the body, because that's what happened to vampire bats. Vampire bats apparently originally did not drink blood, and over the centuries, they lost certain, um, I guess you could say, certain. amino acids. And by losing those amino acids or genes, it caused them to be adapted to drink blood. It caused their stomach to be able to absorb the iron because blood is rich in iron, and their stomach lining would absorb the iron, and then their stomach lining changes, more or less falls off, dies, and is discharged with their waste. And then it grows back and it starts absorbing iron out of the bloodstream because, too much iron is not good for, any species. So if you're going to drink blood, you got to get rid of that iron. So I have a chapter where I just look at mutations as far as I explore all avenues how uh, a person could become a vampire. Uh, and I did that by looking at studies that different people have did over the years concerning the vampire bats that live in Central and South America. So that was interesting. Um, Also, I look at things like why doesn't a vampire have a reflection in the mirror?
Mm.
And the situation is if a vampire is exposed to our starlight and our starlight kills it by denaturing its DNA, then the vampire has probably developed some type of technology so that light will bend around it and not touch it, whether it's some type of shield or some type of electromagnetic energy which causes the light just to bend around it. And then that's why they don't have a mirror image. But then at the same time, others have said, well, how can we see them if light's bending around them? So that's also another situation. And it could be that they can turn their shield on and off. So, maybe if they're out in the sunlight, the shield is going to be on. Maybe if they're inside, the shield would be off. But most mirrors that I know of are inside. So it's not foolproof, but it explores it and looks at, the whole situation of a vampire not having a mirror image. It could also be that the vampire is telepathically beaming their information, their audio, and their video directly into your brain. So your eyes interpret that, and your audio, your ears interpret that the vampire is standing in the room in front of the mirror. But when you look in the mirror, the vampire's not there. That it might be because they're really not. They're just sending that message to you directly into your brain. Now, also, it could be that the vampire is communicating with you, but they're in another dimension. They're not in the same dimension that we're in, kind of like the multiverse situation. And that might be one reason why they don't have a mirror image. So
What
I just look
makes
at
you?
things like that.
What makes you? Well, I guess we have about 30 seconds here, because I want to see like what was the thought or what was the incident that initially started you on this path, because thinking outside of the box, I can see where some things line up and would make sense. But I want to talk about what was the incident that made you come to this recollection, this aha moment. We'll go ahead and get to that and more right after the break, right here on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. Getting into the woo tonight on a Saturday. See you when we come back. All right, we are clear and we are on break, and it's still in front of the YouTube audience. They can see us here and hear us.
Did you,
We'll go ahead and say
Did you
hi.
want me to answer that question?
We'll do it right after the break.
All right.
Yeah, right after the break. And so let me write this down because my memory isn't that great. You know, we do these 5 minute breaks and I come back and I'm like, wait a minute, what were we talking about? Wait a minute. Let me see here. Okay. All right. And Dennis Benke, thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing up. Sarah Yon, appreciate you showing up here. Let's see. We have David Kanyak. Kanyak, appreciate you coming in. Can't believe I put that on the screen, but I did. That's how we do. Woo Riders DG, appreciate you showing on up here tonight. Also, Darkness Falls Research. What's y'all thoughts about energy vampires? Oh boy, that's a whole rabbit hole for you right there. Let's see who else has come in. Jerry Carter. Hey, Jerry Carter. Thanks for showing on up tonight. Delilah. Hey, Delilah. Thanks for coming on in to the show tonight. The Ferret as well. Thanks for coming in. Who else? Flat Six. Appreciate you, Flat Six. Hope your birthday was fantastic. Let's see. Magneticus Attractus. I didn't say your name earlier, buddy. Appreciate you coming on in. Jerry Elmore. I don't think I got to you either. Let's see who else. Candy Wolf. Candy Wolf, thanks for coming in. AJ, appreciate you showing up. Rosalie. And yes, Joshua, appreciate you showing on up. Yeah, so essentially, guys, for some of there's a lot of new names in here tonight. So you've come in on the After Hours Radio Show, which is a weekend show we do right here on Spaced Out Radio, Saturdays and Sundays, 8 p.m. Pacific until 11 p.m. is when we shut it down. We have Dave Scott, who runs the Wu Train Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. until midnight Pacific time. We also have Dirty Phil for Cryptic Cartoons Saturdays at 2 p.m. Pacific. We have Lee and Grantavius Max on UFO Max Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific. And then Element 115, which is Lee and Tim James. Fridays, 8 p.m. Pacific. 7 days a week, you can find something right here on Spaced Out Radio. So if you haven't already, we'd appreciate you hitting the subscribe button. Also, there is a button right below the screen. It's a little thumbs up, a thumbs down. Let us know how you're liking and not liking the show tonight. It's totally up to you. Just interact. We would appreciate that. And lets YouTube know how to treat this show. Should they show it to other people? Right? I think they should. And also, you can put in questions. We usually wait until hour 2, but I'll be looking out for questions. So if you put them in, just make sure you put them in caps, and we'll make sure we get them to the guests on the back half of the second hour. Getting back into vampires here for a moment when we come back from the radio break, and we'll jump into some other topics. Make sure you don't go anywhere tonight. And this is probably the last show that we'll do until Space Out Radio comes back next week. So let's have fun tonight, guys. Let's hit the likes. Let's get the likes up early. And we totally appreciate the love and support. Let's see. Itzy Zaza. Hey, Itzy Zaza. Thanks for coming on in. Stargazer. Thanks for showing up. Let's see. A few people came as I was doing that. All right. Nope. Okay. We're current again. Good. All right. We got about 20 seconds left coming back from radio. And 10 seconds here. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. Back half of the first hour, back with our guest, Keith Evans, talking paranormal and vampires, stepping into the unknown, getting into a lot of good stuff here, jumping into the woo tonight with Mr. Rob G. Make sure you don't go anywhere. If you do, we have archives totally free, youtube.com/at Spaced Out Radio. As we get back to the question that I had for Keith right before the break, which was essentially, what was the moment where you started connecting these dots and coming to conclusions that vampires might be extraterrestrial? Like, what was it? What were some of the first thoughts or ideas you had when you came to that, when it clicked? Like, hey, wait a minute, these might be related.
Well, I don't think it was when I was younger. When I was younger, I used to think that vampires would just be within the paranormal range. But I think it was sometime after I received my degree in chemistry. I didn't get my degree in chemistry until I was 50 years old.
Hmm.
And with all the courses I took, I just thought, well, it's leaning more and more towards a very intelligent being with a lot of technology that we don't even understand yet on Earth. So that's what led me to believe they're probably extraterrestrial. And I think they still fall into cryptids, I would say, because they're still pretty much unknown. I mean, I don't know any, sometimes there's people that put on for show and drink a little blood, but I can fall out of a tree, but that doesn't mean I'm a bird and I can fly. I might be
Yeah.
flying for a few seconds till I hit the ground. But I still feel that, they're paranormal also. But I would say it was sometime after I got my degree in chemistry that it started to make sense that they were probably extraterrestrial, vampires.
Yeah, I want vampires to be real. I want them to be so real. The living forever aspect, the immortality, there's the being able to fly, right? Because these are things they show you in the movies and things that I connected to as a kid. This is why I wanted to be a vampire. I wanted to give up my human life and become a vampire. It was that deep. But when we look at this, it makes sense when you explain it in that way, where it's like, okay, it could be a cryptid, because there's a lot of weird things in the cryptid category, a lot of just strange things. And the more I look at it, there's an image called the alien timeline, which I bring up from time to time, and it shows drawn descriptions of aliens as described over the years, starting at Roswell. And there are a lot of weird extraterrestrials listed in there, like some that look like Ewoks and little hairy creatures. And it's like not the typical what you would think for extraterrestrial. So is there, at the end of the day, you'd have to start wondering if you could consider the cryptid bucket and the parent and the alien bucket as one. Like, do they cross over? Because how do you know that something's an alien versus a cryptid? They're both just these weird creatures. So how would you
Yeah.
really know? And so it makes sense when you put vampires into the cryptid category, how you could then go a step further and say, hey, maybe extraterrestrial. That makes sense.
Well, I'd like to say one thing about vampires. able to live forever, they surely do live a long time as compared to humans. And I feel that vampires really don't die of old age. They can be destroyed. I think if a vampire, if there's an explosion, I think the vampire would be dead. That would be it. It would be destroyed. Or if they're exposed to severe radiation, radioisotopes, I think that would kill a vampire. And I also feel that a vampire could be burned or melted and destroyed that way. But I think if a vampire is allowed to just not go under any severe trauma, I think that they can pretty much live forever. And I feel that the planet that vampires came from probably is a planet where uh, life is kind of cheap on Earth if you look at it one way. I mean, everything eats something else. So maybe vampires came from a planet where you don't eat another animal. You just drink some of their blood and allow them to live, which to me
Oh.
would be pretty humane if you look at it that way. I mean, if you look at, I've ate chicken, hamburger, pork. That means a pig had to die, a cow had to die, a chicken had to die. If a vampire just drinks a little bit of their blood, within a couple days, they're going to build that blood back up in their own system. So
Mhm.
I really think that, vampires have come from a planet where life is so sacred that you don't eat it, any living thing. You might borrow some of its nutritious blood so you can live off of it as far as your nutrition. Um, but that's the way I look at it. And it seems like if you can frighten someone, you can manipulate them. Anything that's different to most human beings, they're afraid of it. Whether it looks different, it sounds different, it thinks different. And vampires are definitely different. But I say, don't be a caveman with technology. Look at the vampire, understand the vampire. Don't be afraid of the vampire just because the vampire is different. But maybe there is some way that vampire technology could assist us in helping us to live forever. Maybe if we had a vampire friend and he say, "Hey, let me adjust your DNA, Mister Evans, and then you'll never die of old age." I'd say, "Well, go ahead. I'll be
That's right.
writing books about paranormal for eternity." you know,
I gotta tell you, I was a kid when I wanted to live forever. Now that I've lived and I see what this world is, I don't know
yeah,
that I'm more and more like, nah, this one time is okay. I think I'm
I
okay with
can
one.
understand that. I
Yeah.
understand that.
So what do you do when you there are obviously people who are gonna hear what you're saying right now and be like, come on, Keith, come on. They're gonna like, okay, you're talking vampires is aliens. Hey, vampires don't even exist, Keith. When you have people saying that to you, like what are some of the things you could point to out, some things that say, yeah, no, the vampire tale is true, and this is the reason why. Would there be
Well,
anything you're able to point to?
I can't I can't prove that I'm not some type of AI recreation. I can't prove that I'm not in some sophisticated um, TV show where I'm just AI generated. I can't prove that. So
Hmm.
certainly I can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that vampires exist or ghosts exist, but
Now, I
I've
wouldn't say
actually had experiences where I feel that they exist. But
okay.
till all people have those experiences, then I can understand them feeling that it doesn't exist. But for the people who have had paranormal experiences, then of course they're a believer after that.
So
So
talk
it
to
might
us
take
about
that.
some of those experiences that you've had. Those might actually help out because once again, we've taken vampires and put them in a category of cryptids and extraterrestrial, which makes sense. When we break it down, it makes sense to put it in that category. But for someone who is like, is there a historical incident where Dracula supposedly played a role? Not maybe not Dracula himself, but just a vampire. Like, are there reports out there like the same way that you have like Mothman reports out there of a mysterious creature flying through the night? Do you have any? Are there any of those same sort of stories for vampires current day?
Well, when I was a child growing up in Maryland, um, the uh, used to have a newspaper called News American, and the News American would run a lot of, um, I guess you could say, paranormal type situations where they were reporting on anything from Bigfoot to vampires. And they were reporting on people who were not killed, but who had bites uh, on their body in different areas, not just the neck, where it looked like someone had drained out blood. So I remember that from back in the early 70s. And, in Maryland, a part of Maryland I lived in was kind of conservative and religious. And of course, anyone who wanted to do paranormal research, they thought was somewhat delusional.
Mm,
So it was very hard to find people who wanted to even read about it, much less talk about it. So when I saw this in the newspaper, I was just overjoyed. Uh, that's the only time I can remember me personally reading about a person being bit by a vampire. And
mm,
I honestly feel it's look at how many people each month, each week that are killed in auto accidents, and we still ride cars. I don't know of one single person that's ever been killed by a vampire because the vampire drank too much of their blood or because a vampire drank any of their blood, other than this information I read in the newspaper. And I had every reason to believe that the newspaper article was legit and that was being brought forth. Now, there could be other explanations for why people would have puncture marks. There might be other things that were biting them in the night that could leave marks that would look like two fang marks. There's other animals that do bite. So it doesn't mean that it was a vampire. And I don't know that anyone died or was severely harmed uh, during this newspaper reporting. But it went on for, it seemed like it was probably the summer of 1973, if I remember correctly. And there were also a rash of Bigfoot type reports. You know, Mainly people didn't see the Bigfoot, but would just hear something big running through the woods. That could have been a bunch of kids just making noise. So I don't know, but
right.
it was nice that the newspaper, the News American, which they no longer exist in Baltimore, but they picked it up and talked about it. I thought that was great. It made me happy.
Wow. I mean, throwing, that this is a new revelation, right? Because like I said, I haven't talked about vampires in a while, just in general, and then to bring them back into the fold, and then make them make sense to why they could potentially be extraterrestrial, paranormal, or cryptid. With that making a lot of sense, and then thinking about how weird some of these cryptids that we have been told about are. then it just really fits right in. It actually fits right in. So for anyone out there, it's like, well, how do those two things intersect? I think, but the thing what Keith is outlined here definitely makes the case that you could put them in that boat or in that bucket and figure it out from there. You know, it would be when you talk about just blood being drinking or drunk or drunk drinking drunk. I think it's drunk when you have blood being drunk by these vampires. I think about cattle mutilations where the blood has been totally removed from a cow, and then other animal mutilations as well, where the same thing happens. Then I start to think about, okay, if we're talking about vampires, are vampires related in those incidents too? Are we looking at the wrong thing? Like, we don't even know technically what is taking these cows and draining their blood. So potentially, could it be vampires doing this since it's one of their characteristics, anyways?
I don't think so. I think a vampire would be very discreet. If a vampire was going to drink some of, cattle or a horse or any large mammal's blood, I think they would just take a couple pints and let it be that. And I think
'Cause
humans have what, about 8 pints of blood, and I think some of these cattle are probably have at least 20 pints of blood, so they could easily take a pint or two from each, from a herd, each cattle, maybe
Yeah,
20 or 40 cattle in a herd,
and
and
be okay.
still have a good meal without having to kill them. So, but it is strange that all the blood would be drained and none of it would be there. It's almost looks like, possibly someone has taken the blood for some reason, whether it be vampires eating it or some other alien eating it, or maybe they utilize the blood to do experiments on. Maybe some extraterrestrial came down here and said, "All right, our university back up in, where we come from needs some blood from Earth, so let's go ahead and drain this one cow and or the you know get all their blood, and then we'll have everything we need to take back home with us."
So as I think about this thing, and I'm like, okay, vampires considered being extraterrestrial. I'm just trying to think of like what would go against that. What would say, maybe not. And I just thought of one thing: if they do come from a planet somewhere, and assuming it's a vampire planet, what would they be preying on? Like, would they, it would essentially have to be a human inhabited, or I guess I don't know necessarily it would be right, because if you look in pop culture, they show vampires draining blood from rats and things of that nature, right? Other animals, not just humans. So I would assume then, as long as there was plasma on the menu, then they would be able to survive and coexist. So maybe if they are on some other planet, there is something there that has blood like us, essentially. Because I'm just trying to see
Yes.
how they would sustain themselves on a planet of their own.
Well, there could be all types of different types of animals that may actually have scales. They might have outer scales that are brittle and break and fall off, and they might just be full of whole blood cells. And vampires might not have to bite anything. They might be able to go around and pick up where these, animals on another planet are totally different species and revolve totally differently than the way animals have revolved here on Earth. So they might be able to get a lot of whole blood without having to drink or bite any animal.
Huh. I think it's worth looking into. I mean, there's enough there. I gotta say, initially, I was like, I don't know how these things would intersect. I don't see where these lines would be able to cross. But then now that you've explained and given a few examples that makes sense, I think it's at least something to look at a little bit further. Like I said, just looking into Dracula, seeing what the history of Dracula is, and then aligning it with historical UFO encounters or historical alien encounters to see if they're similar in nature. I would be interested to know, where that lands. So I may do some more looking into this to try to see what this is. But moving to the side of that, because I know this is a book that you have written, the vampires, was it Darker Night, Night or Dark? Real or fake? What is your book?
Yeah,
Vampires.
it's real.
Yeah, no. What is the name of
Not
your
fiction.
book?
Oh, Vampires Dead or Alive.
Dead or Alive. Dead or Alive. Okay. So Vampires Dead or Alive. You wrote that, and then now you move over. You have another book that gets more into paranormal. Somewhat familiar with Hayes House. I've heard of it before. What inspired you to kind of get into that and write that book?
Well, the Hayes House was such a wonderful place to do paranormal research. The two families that have lived there from the time the Hayes House was built, the Bucks and the Hayes family and Gibson family, uh, they more or less, after death, wanted to look after the house to make sure that it was, maintained and stayed the way it was. And they loved that house that much. So that was one of the things that made me want to write the book. I'd never done paranormal research in a location that seemed to have so many ghosts and spirits that were acting as guardian angels to make sure that the house survived into the future. I just thought that was so cool.
Okay, explain that. Explain that. And this is the Hayes House, right? The image on the screen.
No,
This it said
uh,
it was Hayes House.
there are more than one Hayes house. This is
Okay,
the Hayes house,
where is it located?
Apalachicola, Florida.
All right,
That's a picture of it from the southwest side.
let me bring up the
It's
Hayes House,
a
Florida.
1908 Victorian style uh, three-story house. Well, the third story was just attic space, but now it has an apartment on the third floor.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can find that because we're actually getting ready to go to our break at the top of the hour, and I'll make sure that we show that on the other side of the break. So the
Okay.
Hay House, and that's in Florida. Yeah, for some reason this came up with the Hay House
Well,
in some.
there are many Hayes house. Uh, this Hayes house is spelled Hays. Some Hayes houses are spelled Hayes. So, and there are more than one book concerning houses that have been named Hayes.
Okay,
So,
I'll have to bring that up during the break. Okay, well that's cool. So we're gonna get into talking about the Hayes House then for hour two, getting in some good paranormal stuff there, and I would love to hear the reason why this attracted you. You were attracted to this particular location because we know there are haunted locations everywhere. And have you actually been to other locations other than Hayes House?
yeah,
Okay, good.
a
So we'll talk
lot.
about that. We'll talk about that and a lot more right after the break. Guys, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we're going to commercial. See you in 5 minutes, Keith.
All right.
right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We are now moving into After Hour number 2 with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. We're going to be joining right back here with our guest, Keith Evans, here in just a moment. We have about 30 seconds before we come back from radio break, guys. Let's just make sure that you put all your questions in caps for this hour. We'd appreciate it. We have about 15 seconds left. Okay, we got that question, Roger Murray. Also, anything else you guys put in the chat, I am looking for it. So 10 seconds left, and let's get ready to go. 5 seconds. Here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, After Hours radio show, After Hour number 2 with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. We're jumping into conversation here with Keith Evans, talking paranormal and vampires, stepping into the unknown. We're also going to get into some paranormal stuff here, talking about Hay House and various other things. Make sure you don't miss it. If you do, you can hop in the archive. It's free, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, as we get back into the conversation. So, yes, I wanted to, Keith, go ahead and get into Hay House. So the image I had up, I couldn't find actually the one you're referring to, but you can show the book. I'll go ahead and bring you up on screen so we can see the cover, and then we can talk about this here. So you're on screen. Okay, so that you're showing the book, The Hay House.
Now, the Hayes House is no longer available in this form, paperback. It's only available ebook on Kindle. So I wanted to let everyone know. But this is one of the few ways I can show people the book. But it's only available. The Hayes House Ghost for People 2 is available ebook on Kindle.
All right.
No longer available paperback.
Okay, talk to people about the Hayes House. What is it?
Well, it's a really nice house. I was doing paranormal research for an extended period of time at a business very close to the Hayes House. And it was one of those things where I should have got written permission before I started doing paranormal research, but I waited until the end and never got that written permission. So I realized that the two families that had lived at the Hayes House also were owners or part owners of the business that I had completed at least a couple years of paranormal research at without getting permission to write a book. Because if there's an actual place that's standing, you need the owner's permission to write the book. So that was heartbreaking for me, because that place that I did 2 years worth of paranormal research at, it had so many different types of paranormal activity going on that I have not even matched that with all the paranormal experiences and research that I've done since I left that one location that I could not get permission to do paranormal research. I have not come across the different styles and types of paranormal activity that I just found in that one location. So it was heartbreaking that I couldn't write that book. But since I already knew and had a familiarity with the ghosts and spirits concerning the Buck family and the Hayes and the Gibson family, I thought, well, why not try to get permission from the owner where both of these families, or all three of these families, had lived in the past? So it was very hard to catch the owner of the Hayes House at the time, because she lived out of town. So I had went there and knocked at least 3 or 4 times, and I tried one more time, and she was there. And I told her who I was. I was a paranormal researcher, and I'd like to get written permission to do paranormal research and to write a book about the Hayes house. And she just smiled. And I knew I was in. Because believe it or not, when I knock on people's doors and tell them who I am and ask permission to write a book about their house, some of them turn white as a ghost and look like they're going to pass out because Florida is very conservative. And there's something about conservative people that just don't allow paranormal. So, when the person gets that funny look on their face, they're not going to say yes. They might not say no, but they never say yes, at least so far not. But the fact that she just smiled, I knew I was in. And then she said, yes, she can do paranormal research. And I drew up an agreement, which stated that she would allow me to do paranormal research at her house and then write a book about it. And that became my first book. After my other first book fell through, but always get permission ahead of time, because as a paranormal researcher, you put your time, your money, you're traveling into doing paranormal research, and then if you can't do the book, you're out. So always get permission up front before you do any paranormal research.
Have you, what was, you said, it sounded like you had some wild experiences in relation to the Hay House. What were some of those things that you encountered?
Well, at the Hayes house, I got a lot of thermal readings. Thermal readings in the shape of kind of like a silhouette, cold areas, or at least colder than the ambient temperature. And the first time I did paranormal research in the Pat and Kathleen room, I didn't even realize that was their bedroom. So I saw almost like a 2x4 looking dark blue line in the corner of the Pat and Kathleen room. And that was in the northeast corner. And then I'd had to take my eyes away from the thermal imager and look at the wall and see, there's nothing there. But look back at the thermal imager and you got that from the bottom floor corner up to the top ceiling, you got that solid blue cold line. And I'm thinking, what could cause that? I was thinking, well, maybe there's a pipe behind there. And maybe there were other people in the house at the time. So I thought, well, maybe somebody's, running a cold water and that's showing up through the thermal imager. But I found out from the owner that there are no pipes in that area, in that corner of that wall. So I feel that was Pat Hayes. And Pat Hayes was a very slender but tall man. He was about 6'3", but he had like a 29-inch waist. And I'm about 5'8", 5'7", and most of the time I'm anywhere from a 36-inch to a 38-inch waist. So
Right.
he was tall and slender, and I think that 2x4 object was actually Pat Hayes. I think that's how he was coming through on my thermal imager. So he was allowing heat to be drawn out of the environment so he could actually show up on the thermal image. And that was nice of him, because a lot of times I use the thermal imager and don't get anything. And then I wanted to check the corner behind me. So I turned to the southwest corner to see how that looked, to see if maybe somehow that'll be blue. in the corner from the floor up to the ceiling. It wasn't. But then I saw like undulating, like silhouettes, like a head and the shoulders,
Yes.
just a dark blue or purplish type, colder color, but it was just undulating, like going in and kind of going out. And it was predominantly two silhouettes, but then there was a third silhouette that would come in. So I think that was Kathleen Hayes, and I also think it was Sunshine Hayes, who also lived at the Hayes house. Kathleen Hayes was Pat Hayes's wife, and Pat Hayes's mother was Annie. And Annie did not live at the Hayes house, but she had a room there, and she would come down and visit her son and daughter-in-law just about every weekend.
Mm.
Excuse me. So I think the third silhouette that was undulating in and out and was less seen than the other two was Annie, because she didn't live there permanently. And of course, Annie's sister was Sunshine. And I think the two predominant, either blue or dark purple silhouettes was Sunshine, and also Sunshine was Pat Hayes's aunt, and Kathleen was Pat Hayes's wife. So then I thought, well, this is great. I mean, I have never received that much visible thermal imaging ever before, and haven't since. I've had some, but not to that amount. And at the same time, I started thinking, maybe they're ganging up on me. You know how everyone involved in paranormal has the ability to think negatively about the experience. So I
Right.
let that negativity drift in, and I thought maybe they don't want me writing the book. Maybe this was a show of force to say, don't write a book about us. And do you know what? I forgot all about the experience until I actually took time to write the book. And
Wow.
when I did the Hayes house, I took copious notes. I would do an hour-long paranormal research. I'd have a tablet right in front of me, and I would take shorthand and write down different things that happened. Because you're not going to remember it all when the hour's done with. So write down short things while it's happening, and then go back and fill in the blanks when you're finished with your hour-long paranormal short session. That's what I call it now. I don't know what I called it back then. Um, I had forgotten all about that situation until I got to that chapter and started working on the Pat and Kathleen room, which the Pat and Kathleen room is either chapter 5 or chapter 6. It's not right at the beginning. So, and then I thought, ain't that something? I forgot all about that. And I think the ghosts and spirits helped me to forget, because they wanted me to write the book, and they didn't want me to continue thinking negatively and give up on pursuing writing the book. Because the last thing I wanted to do is write a book about a house where the ghosts and spirits don't want me to write a book. I
Yeah.
kind of like, when I'm working with ghosts and spirits, I want their spiritually permission to do what I'm doing. I don't want to be writing a book about someone who'd rather not have me there. I think the paranormal works a lot better when you're working with a ghost or spirit that's willing to, you know, be seen, and or at least make themselves known, because then you get more paranormal experiences.
Mm.
So I just thought that was really, that's the only time that I can remember that ever happened. where I had what I thought was a bad experience, then forgot about it, just forgot about it like that. And it was such a overwhelmingly positive image to look at. Um, all that was lost during Hurricane Michael in October 10th of uh, 2018. All my thermal images, all my photos, all my videos of the Hayes House uh, research that I did for the book, all that was lost during the hurricane. I was never able to get it back. The laptop that I had just pretty much floated out of the place where I was living.
Mm.
I wish I would have just went ahead and evacuated. But anyway, I didn't, and the loss is the loss.
So, what is the root of the haunting? Like, what is the story behind the, like, who died? Was someone murdered, or like what was the story behind the haunting?
Oh, there's nothing like that. I mean, uh, it makes for
Just an
captivating
old property.
TV, but uh, most places have paranormal activity, and there's never been any murders. There's
Yeah.
never been any robberies. There's not been any felonies.
Mm.
Um,
I think my,
that's
my house. I think my house falls in that category. We had some ghost shadow people that we filmed in the house that I live in currently. We had phantom knocking. We had crazy orbs that triggered the ring camera. We had almost like a black eyed kids experience with this lady that just walked up to our front door asking to come in and take a shower. And so the moment I had all that, I looked up if anyone died here. Well, I'm not here now, but at my home, looking for
right.
anything that may have happened there, and couldn't find anything. So that just goes to your point that it doesn't have to be some big traumatic event that happened there.
Right.
You would find these energies potentially anywhere in the world, really, if you think about it.
And I think that the ghosts and spirits are more apt, just like people. If you're walking down the street and you don't see anyone you know, you're not going to talk to them. But if you see a paranormal investigator, then you're probably going to go out of your way to say, "Hey, hi, I have a show. Would you be on my show as a guest?" And that's the same way ghosts and spirits are. If they see something in you that they value and they want to communicate with you, then they will. So
Uh-huh.
a lot of times it's just got to be those personalities, or how should I say it, the chemistry. If the chemistry's there, then they're going to communicate with you. If the chemistry's not there, they're probably there and just ignoring you. So it's hard to tell how many ghosts and spirits might have been there and just ignored me, but at least the ones that counted talked to me.
So one of the things I always ask paranormal investigators is, do you go out with a team? Like, do you have because I know you were talking about coming across those energies and you felt that they were those particular family members. So once you have a moment like that, do you have someone that steps in like a medium that tries to make communication, or where do you go at that point once you figure that you might know what the entity is or what the energy is?
No, I always work alone. I always have. And, I started, working alone because, in Maryland where I lived, anyone who spoke about the paranormal was considered to have some type of psychiatric condition. So I just kind of kept it to myself and did my own thing and didn't share it with anybody. Every once in a while, I'd share it with friends and they'd ask me not to talk about it. So I I've never done paranormal research with anyone. I think a couple times I've had a cat that was on the property that might hang out with me. Uh, but that's it. No, no people. Um, I've always done paranormal research alone, and I,
What
I
type of
enjoy
team?
doing it alone. And I really think that ghosts and spirits are more apt to open up if it's one person than if it's a whole group of people with lighting and producers and TV cameras. I think if
Yeah.
you're just by yourself, even if you're filming it, and I always tell them that I'm filming it for either a book or YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, I'm honest with the ghosts of spirits. But I think they're more apt to open up to a single person than if you bring a crowd in. And ghosts and spirits are just people who are no longer have a biological body. And most people don't feel comfortable talking to a wide audience. Some do, but most don't. So why would a ghost and spirit be any different than the way they were when they were alive? They probably don't feel comfortable if it's a large group or even 4 or 5 people. I think ghosts and spirits are more apt to open up and talk to one person. And that's why I think my paranormal experiences have more data because I'm just by myself and it makes the ghosts and spirits feel comfortable.
When you say data, what type of data have you brought in your investigations?
Well, we just talked about the thermal.
Mhm.
I use I use the obelisk 5B, and that's where the ghosts and spirits can use their energy theoretically to choose words from the data bank which is within the obelisk 5B. But I have received numbers and digits, which I've been told the data bank doesn't have a digit or any numbers. So anyway, I also the obelisk 5 has like a true or false or yes or no, which is it's color coded. If it goes to red, then that's either false or no. If it goes to green, that's either yes or uh, yes or true. And there's also a phonics, which is where a ghost and spirit can make sounds. They can just make their own syllables up and form words from syllables.
Okay.
And with phonics, sometimes you get an answer that's right on the money, and other times you just get sounds that it might be a foreign language, but it's
Yeah.
not English. So, but that's the 3 main things that I utilize with the obelisk 5B. In the past, I've also used cameras to try to catch something moving. I use Melmeter, which measures cold, temperature changes. Sometimes with ghosts and spirits, you either get a high temperature or you get a low temperature. And sometimes ghosts and spirits can just mess with the temperature range on your obelisk 5 without the room feeling really cold or really hot. And also the Melmeter has electromagnetic energy, and that used to be a big one that everyone wanted to see. And usually, if there was electromagnetic energy, then you'd have more paranormal activity. That would be a sign of a ghost or spirit. And I haven't used the Melmeter that much because it seemed like most people were getting bored with it. Um, and that's about it. I have things like trying to think, dowsing rods. I have dowsing rods, but I almost would need a fixed camera because now I hold my camera in one hand and do everything else with the other hand. If I use the dowsing rods, I need to have a stand and which I do have, but I just haven't used in a while, and then put the camera down and just stand in front of the camera and ask questions and use the dowsing rods. And
We're going to go ahead and stop right there. We're going to talk dowsing rods and some more experiences with the paranormal right here with our guest tonight, Keith Evans. Paranormal and vampires stepping into the unknown. We'll be talking more when we get back right after the break. See you in a minute. All right, we are clear. We are clear. Okay. All right, awesome. So we'll be going into our last segment here. This is where we have our some audience questions. I know a couple came through, guys, that I was able to tag. If I missed it, obviously, please repost in caps, and we will definitely make sure that we ask those at the end of the show, the end of the hour at the very least. Let's see. You have any extraterrestrial encounter? You ever see a UFO, anything like that, Keith?
Well, I'd have to say possibly. I had a situation where there was missing time. Uh, I used to be a volunteer firefighter, and I think it was before I joined the Army, and I was out running with another firefighter. It was late at night, probably around 10 a.m., and he was getting ready to go into law enforcement and go to like a academy for that. So, and I was trying to get in shape to go into the Army. And when we were running, I just remember seeing a bright light towards the north, and not real bright, but brighter than normal since there was no lights in that area. There are no homes or anything. And heard just like a boom, kind of like a dull thunderclap. And, we both said, "What's that?" And we looked. And the person I was with was running with boots on, and they were hurting his feet. So uh, there was about an hour missing when we got back. And on our way back, I don't remember anything about the run from that point on, other than we were facing the opposite way, running back towards the fire department. And I think I was in front. And then on the way back, the other person was in front of me, and they had their boots off. So anyway, with their boots off, uh, we were running on the side of the road, which was like gravel, and it was hurting his feet. And I said, "When did you have time to take your boots off?" And he said, "Why did you keep asking them questions? You were aggravating them by asking them so many questions." And I said, "Asking who questions?" And then he just kind of said, like, "Well, I don't know. What did I just say?" So anyway, we didn't talk about it anymore after that, but it was like missing time. And I had read later on that area of Maryland, there had been people, it was during the summer, there had been people who had reported alien abductions in that area. Now, I can't say that it was an alien abduction or whatever, but that was the only missing time that I could remember. When we got back to the fire department, it took us, at least an hour longer to do a run that we would have usually been done an hour earlier. So the only thing I could think of, if we were abducted, I was probably fascinated. And when I like something, I'll ask a million and one questions, which usually most people don't like. And that's the first thing he was saying. "Why'd you ask them so many questions?" And he said something about, "That's why they dumped us out, because you were asking too many questions." So if he was remembering the alien abduction, then maybe that was the reason why he was saying, "Why'd you ask them so many questions?" And if
Mhm.
if I was abducted by aliens, I'd have lots of questions.
Yeah, I would too. And I like I said, I'm one of those ones that feel like that we aren't supposed to remember being abducted. So I'm glad to hear that, and I'm gonna ask you again once we come back from radio, so you'll have to go back to that same story again, so that the radio audience hears it. I'll do it later though, on the back half. First, we'll jump into some
All right.
questions, and then I'll go back and ask you again about that, so we can get it on radio. And yeah, so we got about 25 minutes left in the show, well, in the interview, and then we'll continue on after you leave for about another hour.
All right.
Okay, here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back, Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show, back after hour number 2 on the back half of the second hour, which means it's time for questions. Viewer questions are coming up next, plus a lot more. Make sure you guys don't go anywhere. We're going to finish up the conversation with our guest, Keith Evans, talking paranormal and vampires, getting into some really wooly stuff here tonight on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show, as we get right back into the conversation here. So yeah, so getting into the let's see, where were we at? Do you recall what you were speaking about? Because I cut you off as we went into the break. If you don't,
You talking about the missing time?
yeah, actually, well, let's start there. Yeah, you were saying something else as we went into break, but go ahead and
I
start
don't
there with the missing
remember.
time piece. Yeah, that's okay. Start with the missing time, and then I'll sprinkle some audience questions in there as well.
Well,
So
I
the
guess it
missing
was
time, just to preface this, during the break here on YouTube, I asked Keith if he had actually had any sort of extraterrestrial encounter, anything in relation to aliens, extraterrestrials. He stated that he had something that might be viewed as missing time. And if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and go into that story for us, Keith.
well, me and a friend were out running. I was a volunteer firefighter during the time, and I was thinking about going into the army, and my friend was thinking about going into the police academy, and we were out running. It must have been about 10 o'clock at night, and we had run before, not that often, but we knew how long it would take us to get back, and when we got back, it took us an hour longer than what we thought it would have actually taken. So during the run, I was running in front, and my friend was running with boots on because he thought it would be good to train and run with boots on, but they were hurting his feet. So anyway, I heard a boom, and both of us said, "What's that?" And there was like not a really bright light, but it was an area that was mainly woods and no houses. And there was like a light in that area. And the next thing I remember, we're on our way back. And I don't remember having finished the run and turned around. And my friend who was in front of me, his boots were off and he was holding them in his hand. And you could tell it was painful for him to be running on the side of the road, had gravel. And I asked him, I said, "When did you take your boots off?" And he said to me, "Why did you keep asking them so many questions? You know that aggravated them, and that's the reason why they threw us out." And I said, "Threw us out of what?" To that extent. And he looked at me and said, "What? What did I just say?" And anyway, we got back, and that's when I noticed that it took us like an hour longer than what it should have to have completed our run.
Hmm.
And it we never talked about it again, but I always thought if a alien did abduct me, I would just be interesting and wanting to ask a whole lot of questions. And most people say I ask too many questions. That's one of my trademarks. So that sounds like what I would have done had the aliens abducted me. I'd have just been all interested and wanted to know everything about them. So that was my only, and I wouldn't even say it was a alien abduction because I don't know what happened. Maybe my brain just tuned things out. I don't know. Or
Yeah.
maybe my memory just went blank for that period of time. There's other explanations. I'm not saying it's an alien abduction. I'm just saying it's definitely a missing time that I couldn't account for. And I don't think I've ever had any other time since that or before that where I had that type of missing time.
Yeah, man, that's interesting. Definitely interesting. The missing time is definitely a key in a lot of abduction tales, a lot of abduction stories. Now, myself, I feel like, as I was saying during the break, I just feel like for some reason when they conduct these abductions, that we're not supposed to know that it happens. It's supposed to be. I feel like, and people on the channel have heard me say this before, but I feel like it's more of like the same way we go out on the Sahara and we, target a zebra or something else, right? It just sees this helicopter come out of nowhere, chase it down, shoot it with something. It goes completely unconscious, doesn't remember what happened during that time. And then all it knows is that it wakes up at some point in the middle of a field. We're long gone by that point, right? I just feel like that's the way that the abductions are supposed to go too. And then if
Right.
they are, then that would mean that probably a lot of us have maybe haven't had an experience and just don't recall.
Right.
So
That's
yeah,
true.
and that's where you get into regression because I want to know too. So I don't know if you've even thought about regression or what that is. Do you even know what regression is? And have you considered it?
Yeah, I've heard about it. It's when you're supposed to recall things that you have forgotten, especially a
Yes.
traumatic situation. But they say if the person that does the regression manipulates you, they could
Yeah.
actually give you false memories. So you'll
Yeah.
remember things that didn't happen. So I don't know if I trust anyone that much
Yeah.
to do that, you know,
That's
because I
one of
don't
the
want any
reasons
false
I haven't.
memories.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I heard too. That there could be, they could, if they're not strategic with the way that they ask their questions, they can implant false memories into your mind,
Right,
and then you don't know up from down at that point, right? Because you're like, what was
right.
real, what isn't, and then yeah, who wants to do that? So that's the reason why I haven't done it yet. But I hear if you get with someone that's really good, that really does this, that they could tap into, like Mary Rodwell, for instance, someone that I think about, and Deb Shakti would be a couple people that a lot that are really good at doing this. So if you ever think about it, there are a couple of names I could definitely throw to you that would be worth looking at.
Right.
But that ends up being, sometimes the missing piece of the puzzle is what don't we remember? Like what happened that we don't actually remember? If we could uncover that, how much further would we be in understanding what it is that we're doing or what we're dealing with? So it's a double-edged sword. Like there's benefits there, but there is definitely a real risk there as well.
Well, it's a possibility that maybe during this hour-long period of time, uh, the aliens were telling me all about vampires, and that's maybe how I got my ideals for the book. Just a wild thought there. So maybe they're helping you out, and it's up to you to do the rest on your own. So
That's
you
kind of
might
where we.
think they might you might think that everything is your ideal, but it might have been something that the aliens wanted you to remember, except not remember that they told you. You know.
No, you're exactly right. That is definitely something I think about all the time because I'm a creative, I'm an artist, I'm a musician, and it's always amazed me the ability to take something that you envision in your mind and to have that materialize into a physical form through your fingers. And where did it come from? Where did the idea come from? You think
Right.
it's yours, but you likely downloaded it from somewhere. Like the source of that idea is comes from somewhere else. So I'm with you on that. That could definitely explain the idea because that's what I was asking earlier is trying to find when, was there like a moment in your life where your perspective changed on vampires being just what we know them to be to them being extraterrestrial? Like, was there a moment? And if there wasn't a moment that you could pick to, then yeah, it could be definitely something that you would find out more about in regression. You know what I mean? Like an incident where they told you something that you didn't recall they told you until you regressed. So yeah, that's why I say it's a double-edged sword. It's a scary thing just because you hear all those bad things about regression, but then you hear so many good things about it too and how it helps people. Some people though say it traumatizes them because for first of all, you find out things you didn't know and you didn't know that you didn't want to know. You know what I mean? Like they took you aboard the ship, Keith, and they did all these things to you. This is going to come out in your regression. Like, would you want to remember that? You know what I mean? Like, would you want to go forward in life knowing that you were taken and then this is what they did when they took you?
Well, whatever they did, it only lasted an hour. So
Right. If we talk about time being relevant, that hour could be like a year in their time, or it's just strange, man. And as we talk through this, it's I didn't anticipate coming into the conversation tonight seeing vampires in a different light, but I kind of do. I did. I didn't see where the lines connected at initially, but your explanations were excellent. And not you're not overarching and saying that that vampires are aliens. You're just saying, hey, look at this thing. It would make sense that they would be related to the phenomena in some way. And then the phenomena is a general umbrella because everything falls underneath it, all the weird stuff, whether it's Dracula, vampires, extraterrestrials, cryptids, puck wedgies, all the things that you could think about fall under that phenomena umbrella. So
I think
I
there's a
I
very
think you did okay with that.
chance though that they are extraterrestrial, cryptid, and also paranormal. I think they fall under all three categories. Vampires.
Yeah, that'd be definitely something good to look further into. I mean, now that you open my eyes up to it, I'm gonna continue, having that on my mind when I go into conversations, and just trying to see what lines up. Because so you over exceeded my expectations here tonight. So that's actually awesome. Let me grab a couple questions here. Lil Camp 51 is asking you, have you ever been to Transylvania in Romania? Tons of
No,
vampire lore.
no,
Yeah.
I had
And
never
then
been there.
apparently those are the origins, apparently. Like I said, I'm not too big. I don't really know. But Roger Murray's asking you why women think vampires are sexy. Why do you think?
I guess because vampires are always portrayed as being self confident and usually they're quite modest for their abilities. They don't like bully people or take advantage of anyone really. They just kind of leave people alone and they have a lot of self-confidence. That's the only thing I can think of.
I mean, if they keep casting guys like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt as the lead roles, then everybody's gonna think that vampires are just handsome guys, and you know what I mean. They need to cast
Yeah,
someone
that's
else.
true.
Who? Yeah, yeah. It's pop culture, I think, that really does that. But at the same time, I, there is a sort of sexiness to a who is that? Isn't Elvira a vampire? Isn't she supposed to be?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I can understand that. So we're talking Elvira. I can definitely understand.
yeah. I
Um,
like her.
let me see. Jennifer came in earlier. She's saying you can't have self-reflection without a soul. That's one thing that I saved because I wanted to bring up to you because I don't think we even talked about that. One of the reasons why vampires may not have reflections is because they don't have a soul. Is that what you come to understand as well?
No, I disagree with that. I think vampires have a soul just like we have a soul. And soul is just your electromagnetic energy. And when you do pass away, if a vampire was destroyed, say, like in an explosion, then I think their soul would be recycled, reincarnated, just like our soul would be.
Okay, all right. And then Roger Murray, I think this is just a comment here. Keith Evans, my father served U.S. Air Force Vietnam, 81st Flyer Wing, Brentwaters, England. He was a mechanic. Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. So, with that being said, that has actually been all of the questions. So, let's do this. Let's take a couple minutes and get you to talk about your books and where people can find them. Let's talk about what they're about and where people can find them.
Vampires Dead or Alive is available paperback on Amazon, ebook on Kindle. And the Hayes House Ghost for People 2 is only available ebook on Kindle. Uh, did you want me to
Yeah, show the
give a
books.
description?
Yeah, bring the
Oh,
books
yes.
up if you have them there for our viewing audience here. Let me bring
This
that up
is
for you there.
Vampires Dead or Alive.
All right.
And then this is the Hayes House Ghost for People 2. Now, the paperback is no longer available, but it shows you what to look for when you look for the uh, ebook on Kindle. Because
Okay.
the main title is Hayes House, but Ghost for People 2 is the subtitle. And a lot of times it won't come up unless you have that subtitle. So,
Uh, that might have been one of the problems I was having when I looked it up. Okay. Okay. So are you working on anything new? Do you have a new book that you'll be looking at, or where are you going
well,
next?
I'm always thinking and I'm always writing, but I can't say there's anything concrete yet. If anything, I might have 6 or 7 projects going on that are writings and not just, paranormal research.
Hmm.
So a lot of times it's, can I get enough interesting information? I think anyone could write about their paranormal experiences, but so many people would rather just go out and do their own paranormal experiences and not sit at home and read about what I did or what I experienced. So it makes me less likely to want to write a book about my paranormal experiences because I don't think, at least people in America, are really into reading about other people's paranormal experiences. They just want to go out and do it themselves. Now, when it comes to like vampires or something like that, where I feel I have new information that no one has really tried to talk about or explain, then I want to write about that because the people that do read my book are always astonished. They're like, "Wow, I would have never thought of that. I would have never
Yeah.
have went in that direction at all." And I really think that vampires are a sophisticated, ancient species, and I really think we could learn a lot more from them than they can learn from us. And I think sometimes the only thing you had to fear is fear itself. So just
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
vampires are different than us, don't mean we have to fear them.
Yeah. And I mean, just going back, it's just another thing on the list. Like, once again, we talk about cryptids. How many different cryptids are there? There's a lot, 50 more. There's probably more than that. And it's just we're just finding out every single day how weird the world is that we live in, and how it isn't what we thought. And I'm open to all sorts of things now. Now that we I always talk about this. I know people probably get tired of me saying this, but um when we talk about what's possible and not possible, you got to look at just what we know, right? I always point to 60-foot lizards walking on this planet. Same dirt we're walking on, 60-foot lizards shared this same planet. And that's just wild to think of, but it happened and it did. And also the fact that we're sitting on a rock floating through space, that's crazy. We're on a rock, we're on a ball kind of floating through space. What does that even mean? We're rotating around a ball of fire. Like, why? What's going on there? And then space is also infinite. It's infinity. It never ends. Something that never ends. It's what they're saying it is. And so all those things that are so strange and weird that we know are factual, then you got to look at everything else as, man, it could be possible, right? Why not?
There's endless amount of possibilities.
It's an endless amount. Like I said, the multiverse. We haven't gotten to that. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. Just take what we know for sure, and that's enough for anyone to. You shouldn't have a moment where you could say that's not possible. What are you weighing that up against? Like, what do you mean that? Like, how do you know what the limits are, right? And I don't think there's anybody on this planet that knows that. So that's why it's always good to have these conversations while we would continue to do so. And also on your social media, do you run a YouTube channel?
Yes. Paranormal Short Sessions by Keith Evans is my YouTube channel. And it's free to subscribe. And I have all my paranormal short sessions on there. Most of them are anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. I find if you have anything longer, people just kind of lose interest in it. So I try to keep it short and sweet. And I also put promos and extras on Facebook, Instagram, and also on YouTube. I think people enjoy watching very short segments. And sometimes the short segments are the best. I look at them and I say, wow. Because sometimes you'll catch something that you didn't even realize. I mean, I've caught all types of sounds and I thought, I was there and I don't remember hearing that. So check it out. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I definitely did. I went over to the channel, and just to kind of reiterate, what is the name of the actual channel?
It's called Paranormal Short Sessions by Keith Evans.
Okay.
And I chose short session because the Three Stooges always did shorts. So I thought, well, it's about most of my paranormal shorts or paranormal research is about as long as Three Stooges cartoon. Well, maybe I'm outdating myself. Maybe there's a lot of people that don't know the Three Stooges from the 30s and 40s and 50s.
I think you've taken something from the 30s, 40s, and 50s and then made it work in today's world, which is crazy to think about. That's a full circle moment because, it's all about short content in media nowadays. And you're right. There is a sweet spot for attention, for keeping the attention of your viewers. So and it's not these long radio shows that we do here, but we do this for radio, and it translates really well in the radio. Like if you hear this show on radio, you're like, wow, okay, but it doesn't make sense in the video world, and so that's why we're always trying to get people to understand this is a radio show that you are seeing recorded on video. But this is mainly for the radio. So awesome stuff here tonight, Keith Evans. I definitely appreciate you coming through. We have each other's information. Stay in touch, and we will be talking soon.
All right. I'll stay in touch. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Keith. Have a great night.
Conversations
Have a good night.
Conversations that move the
You're
needle.
listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right. See you guys right after the break. right, welcome back, Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. We are in After Hour number 3. Coming back in 20 seconds, we'll jump into some Steve Stockton Tales and Told Missing Person Mysteries. Maybe fit in some UFO and weird news, and we may be shutting this one down. Maybe I think about 30 minutes early, so about 30 minutes after the hour. I'll see what's going on. I'll let you know. Here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. After hour number 3. We want to go ahead and thank our guest here tonight, Keith Evans, for stepping into the unknown, talking paranormal and vampires here tonight. Getting a little on the wooey side, right? Well, that's what we did. We did it, and we'll do it again right here. Make sure if you missed any of the conversation, you jump in the archive. Absolutely free. YouTube.com/Spaced Out Radio. As we get ready to go ahead and jump into some Steve Stockton Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries. Here we go.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries. Welcome to The Missing and the Fae, Part 4. Believe it or not, there is one place in the United States that has had so many Fae encounters that to those of us who are interested in and researching these topics could possibly give this place the name the fairy capital of the United States. What mysterious and unknown woodland or forest am I speaking of here? Well, neither. Would you believe Detroit, Michigan? Now, this is not just a couple of sightings by New Age intellectuals trying to push the fairies are real and can live in urban areas too agenda. For centuries, there have been reports of gnomes and other species of little people in the Detroit area. Some of them date back even before the Europeans settled here. So basically, before it was even named Detroit, possibly before the state of Michigan even existed. Is it something about the land there? Did the settlers intrude on some magical place where the veil between our world and theirs is so much more thin? Let's look at some of these Fae encounters and see if we can figure it out. The origins of our first story lie within the Ottawa tribe. These are the natives who were living on the land before the English and French settlers came in and took it over. This particular encounter tells of the Red Dwarf, as the natives called them. These little people are just as mischievous as their brother and sister species and can be just as mean and evil. However, and it's interesting, as it always is when dealing with the Fae, that this particular type of Fae are the protectors of the land and the caretakers of the earth. Extremely powerful nature spirits who are most likely provoked by colonization of any sort that doesn't recognize the Fae and respect the land itself. When the French settlers came into that area, they brought with them their own legends of the Fae. Theirs were called Luten, which actually have their origins in Nordic folklore. However, the French seemed to believe very much in these devious little tricksters who went about playing pranks on the settlers and anyone they could get a good shot at. They disliked humans and even displayed at times some behaviors which we would consider to be similar to the effects of having a poltergeist or noisy spirit in our home. So, suffice to say, these Fae used their magic and enjoyed doing so. They are very mean-spirited and sometimes even downright evil. So, as the French colonized the land there where Detroit is now and mixed with the natives, these two legends ended up combining. The Europeans came in and with their own legends of the Fae, which were that these creatures were more than merely mysterious forest entities who played mean-spirited pranks, but rather malevolent harbingers of doom, chaos, and destruction. The founder of Detroit, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, on March 10th, 1701, decided to throw a party. During the party, as he was greeting his guests, he noticed some people he didn't invite and who definitely weren't dressed for the occasion. One was a woman who looked more like a fortune teller and had a cat on her shoulder. She immediately took his palm and told him that while he was destined to start a great city, it would be a place of much violence and bloodshed for ages to come. The old hag also gave a warning to dear Antoine. Pay homage to and heed the Red Dwarves, and do not, for any reason, upset them. She went on to explain that to do so would be his downfall. Now, Antoine, being a modern man for his age, didn't believe in such things as fortune tellers, palm readings, and fey creatures, and laughed at the woman and kicked her out of his party. He had her removed quite violently, in fact, and went on about his days without giving even a second thought to her warning about not upsetting the Fae, who were already inhabiting the area he was trying to colonize and turn into the greatest settlement the New World had seen so far. One night, Antoine decided to take one of his mistresses for a walk around his new city. As the couple were walking, they overheard some of the settlers talking amongst themselves and stopped to eavesdrop. The group were talking about how they had seen Les Petits Nains Rouges, or the Little Red Dwarfs, and that they felt the city was now doomed to fail and falter. Once again, Antoine scoffed and was even amused by the stories, which were growing by the day, with the people settling the colony catching sight of these little people, or Fae folk, as we have come to collectively call and know them. Not long after this event, however, Antoine Cadillac himself had his own encounter with what he described as a deformed dwarf-like creature, covered in blackish red fur and possessing beady eyes. The creature's face was fierce and its eyes piercing and blood red. It had crooked and disgusting teeth when it looked at him and sneered. He took a club that was standing nearby and bashed the creature about the head, but it just laughed and ran off. He allegedly had this particular encounter in his own grand home. After this, so the legend has it, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac lost everything. He died alone and penniless, a ruined man. The city named after him left with a kind of strange curse, just as the old hag fortune teller had predicted. Would Detroit be the same today if he had simply heeded her warning and given respect to the Red Dwarfs? Now, while we'll never know, but it is said that they still roam around the city to this very day, and sightings haven't become more scarce since the 1700s, when Antoine had first envisioned the settlement. These self-same creatures, or perhaps one of the same species anyway, who look exactly the same, was seen that same year repeatedly by a farmer in the area. The farmer alleged that the thing would peer in his windows at night, terrify his family. It would also stalk him as he plowed his fields and tended to his animals. Likewise, his family and young children especially weren't immune to the creature's torment. Another farmer, around the same time, said this same beast-looking thing would stomp on the roof of his barn at all hours of the day, and especially at night, just to rile up the horses and cause the tired family great strife. It would steal his chickens as well. On July 23, 1763, 200 British troops had amassed on the outskirts of the city to surprise a group of native rebels who had defied the post-war policies the British had put into place for the settlers and Native Americans in the area alike. This apparently made them the enemy, and the troops were prepared to surprise attack them during the night while they were unguarded and asleep. This was during the insurgent uprising, which is known to this day as Pontiac's War. This was, of course, named for the fierce leader of the Ottawa tribe, Chief Pontiac. The war that this led to was extremely violent, with the armies on each side killing and attacking innocent civilians on the streets and in the villages, pillaging homes and slaughtering women, infants, and children who had nothing to do with anything and no rights to do with anything even if they wanted to. It was total chaos and bloodshed, and the Red Dwarfs didn't go without noticing all that blood being spilled on their sacred land. They were seen by hundreds of people during this time, soldiers and Native Americans alike. They were spotted sitting on the banks of a nearby creek where the bloodiest battle took place. This creek, which ran so red with blood, it was still to this day known as Bloody Run, and the little Red Dwarfs were dancing and celebrating. They were literally laughing and shouting with glee, not rooting for one side or the other, mind you, just reveling in the death and carnage of the war before them. Their demeanor was described as elated and joyous. They were even witnessed dancing amongst the corpses of the dead and swimming in the bloody creek. These little evil creatures were celebrating the bloodshed. Flash forward now, during the Great Detroit Fire of 1805, which burned most of the city to the ground, the Red Dwarfs were sighted by hundreds of witnesses at that time too. In the days leading up to the fire, they were seen by many witnesses throughout the city, most of whom didn't even know what they were seeing. By the time the 1800s rolled around, most people had forgotten about the city's founder and the warning of the old hag fortune teller. While the disastrous fire was still blazing and people were dying left and right all around, witnesses reported seeing evil little red men dancing around in the flames and on top of the charred corpses. They were seen in the aftermath of the War of 1812 and all the way up into modern times, including the race riots in the 1960s and the extreme desolation and abandoned buildings that occupy Detroit to this day. Now, let's move out of the Motor City and into some more desolate areas of the world and see what other encounters and species we can uncover and perhaps learn a bit about. In case the need should ever arise that we need to be knowledgeable about the Fae and perhaps what to do should we come upon one or several. We should already know that there are thousands of species and hundreds of realms. When a person is kidnapped by a fairy, their fate depends on so many things. We always talk in these videos about the missing in the woods and the Fae's responsibility for such abductions and even the deaths of the missing in question. But what about the people who have come back, that survived? What are their stories like? What do they remember, if anything, about where they were and maybe even why? What happens when the missing end up deceased and people suspect a Fae to be the culprit? How do you explain that to the police? In 1909, a woman in Ireland named Annie McIntyre was abducted by fairies, allegedly, and had quite a story to tell. She was said to have been born on Halloween in 1839, which makes her more prone, some say, to being able to see and possibly interact with many supernatural realms, including those of the Fae folk. She is said to have had a lifelong obsession with, but an immense respect for the Fae. She claims this is because on the night of her birth, she was abducted by the Fae, and had it not been for her brother happening upon the celebrations, she would have most certainly become one of them. No changeling was left behind, and though no one is sure why she was left alone on the night of her birth to be stolen, here's what she claimed until the day she died. On that night of Halloween in 1839, fairies crept into her home mere minutes after she was born and stole away with her, wrapped in her bedclothes and a small sheet her mother had made for her. As the fairies were bringing her to the nearest circle or portal to one of their realms, they were celebrating, dancing and singing under the moonlight. They were cheering that they had gotten away without being seen, and the couple, who were the ones who would be raising the child, were being hoisted on the other little people's backs. It was a grand celebration while they moved towards the portal. However, Annie's brother was coming back from a friend's house, walking through the woods, and heard the commotion. The flutes and music being played and celebrations happening in the woods right behind his house. He went to investigate and claims he saw dozens of little people carrying off his infant sister, who he knew had just been born that very day. Allegedly, he took his Bible, which he just happened to be carrying, and tossed it right into the group of fairies. They immediately set the infant down and scattered, most of them simply disappearing into thin air. He scooped his baby sister up into his arms and brought her back to the family home. Annie's mother and family were so overjoyed with her return that they had a huge celebration themselves and doted over her, so much as she was almost lost to them forever. There were many precautions set into place that night in that village, which have lived on throughout the centuries to assure that babies would no longer be so easily swept up and taken by iron bars being hung above the crib itself being made entirely of iron, pinning the infant's nightclothes to the pillow or mattress of the crib, sprinkling the child with holy water before bed and throughout the day if they should be left alone for even a second. There were so many ways thought of to protect infants and children back then from a Fae abduction. Now, these precautions didn't always work, though, but for the most part, they did, or at least they seemed to. Maybe it would be wise for those of us in modern times who believe in and have respect for such things to take notice of and heed the warnings and advice of preventative measures. Instead, though, we buy cute little kits to build our own fairy gardens and set elf totems on a shelf at Christmas time, which, unbeknownst to most people, only provokes the elemental spirits and invites them into your home to do you even more harm. Aside from the brownie species of the Fae, we have yet to find another who is inherently good and not known for any evil intentions or ill will toward the human race was plowed down their homes in the forest and disrespected them by portraying them as goofy little scantily clad women flying around sprinkling magic into little kids' eyes just to play with them, or men just to daze and seduce them. Maybe we should give them more credit and be more wise in their ways. Then maybe they'll stop abducting not only our children, but our hunters, our campers, our hikers, our sightseers, from the beautiful and majestic lands and national parks and national forests that the Fae folk guard so tightly and try so hard to keep us from destroying.
All right, Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries once again. Steve Stockton going for the Grand Slam with another epic tale here. Once again, shout outs and prayers to those families who still haven't seen their missing family members or their missing people. Yeah, good work, Steve Stockton, as we go ahead and get ready to jump into some weird UFO and weird news. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, everybody. UFO and weird news of the week. We're actually just going to call this weird news. This one is not UFO related, but it's crazy. And in this day and time, you would wonder how something like this could happen. Apparently, Vegas nightclub responds after fake Justin Bieber performed on stage and racked up $10,000 bar tab. Fake Justin Bieber in Las Vegas gets on stage and performs. So fans, the venue owners, or the promoters, all these people are obviously watching a performance of a fake Justin Bieber, and they allowed this gentleman to run up a $10,000 bar tab. Wow. So an imposter pulled the wool over the eyes of event organizers and had a very nice time doing it. The representatives of a nightclub who were duped by a fake Justin Bieber have spoken out after the imposter racked up a whopping $10,000 bar tab. Knowing Las Vegas, that was probably only 3 drinks, but still. Now dubbed Bustin' Jeeber, the phony pop star took to the stage at XS nightclub at the Wynn in Vegas on Saturday night, August 16th. And the Wynn, these are one of the more of the higher end hotels. So it just blows my mind how this could have happened. But he managed to successfully dupe the venue, crowd, and DJ Griffin too. Awkward. Bieber might have surprised fans with new music recently, but his live performances have been few and far between. So it caught people by surprise when Justin appeared for the impromptu performance. DJ Griffin has shared his embarrassment at falling for the trickster, confessing that the dark venue and loud music didn't help. He explained how it happened. Quote, so his team said he wanted to perform. Sorry, little did I know I was about to be sorry, the DJ wrote after the fraud. After 4 minutes and 27 seconds of what sounded like Justin Bieber, I found out the worst news imaginable. Upon being told the performer was a fake, Griffin's jaws dropped as he exclaimed, no way, later adding, I literally thought he put on a lot of weight since the album dropped. A statement has been released on behalf of the venue following the imposter's antics. Wynn spokesman Michael Weaver said, quote, after an elaborate and multi-step ruse by him and his advanced team, a Justin Bieber impersonator was granted access to the XS stage. Quote, as soon as the error was recognized, he was removed from the resort and denied future entry. Future in this instant means forever. They finished. Whoops. The imposter had been named as Dylan Desclose online, and he has many the same tattoos as Justin Bieber, as well as his buzz cut hairstyle. According to Neon, Desclose did pay for the $10,000 bar tab before he was escorted from the premises. Oh, that was good. That was great. Earlier footage shows the fake walking around and posing for selfies with people. Fans have blasted him online, quote, to get the exact same tattoos as Justin Bieber and come to a nightclub, ... is psychotic. His Instagram account has now disappeared, but prior to that, fans remarked it was alarming how easily he was able to prank everyone. However, others were pleased the club and DJ got just as played as they did. Bustin' Jeeber looked like a whole vibe, though, one joked. I just love that this guy had a team, another added another. Handled with class and grace, praised one fan of the dupe DJ. It looks like Jeeber won't be welcome back there anytime soon. That's outstanding and scary and creepy at the same time, because how can you make a mistake like that, right? How can you allow someone on stage? And we have the same, troubles in live streaming when it's like, who should we allow on the live stage, right? Because you get someone up there that just, does something that detriment to spaced out radio, then it ends up being a problem, right? But it's the trust, right? It's like, someone circumventing your trust and getting into a position where they then do something like this. So that's pretty scary. I know Justin Bieber is like, hey, free promo. He's at the house. He didn't have to go out and do the show. The guy ended up paying the $10,000 bar tab, where I imagine if he didn't, he was probably going to jail that night. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's fun at the same time, but it is also a scary situation to have anyone out there perpetrating you, right? To being you, your identity. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and end this show here tonight a little early, as we have some things going on with Spaced Out Radio offline for the next week, as you heard Dave Scott talk about last night, until Monday of the following week. As you recall, we did something like this last summer as we were getting things together. We had 2 weeks off for the channel. So we'll be taking the next week off, and Dave will be getting some things together. I'm going to think about some things I could do to spice up our show here, some things I can add or remove and mix some things around. So we'll be playing with some ideas for the next week. We will have reruns or rewatches for you to watch. They're all good rewatches, though. Don't not tune in because it's a rewatch. We definitely want to thank our guests here for tonight. Keith Evans coming in talking paranormal and vampires. Stepping into the unknown. We stepped into the woo tonight, not something we normally do on After Hours radio show, but I think the conversation was still great. And we also want to thank the man that you hear right there. That man, Ron Bumblefoot Doll. He's the man that rocks us out each and every weekend as he reminds us to never say never again. Because, yes, the phenomenon is real. And that, because of that, anything and everything beneath that is definitely possible, vampires included. If you love the show tonight, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button, hit the dislike button. Either way it goes, let us know. We do appreciate you and our listeners online and terrestrial radio digital platforms, when and wherever in the world you may be listening or watching from. We appreciate you for tuning your frequency to Space Out Radio, where we do what we do best. What is that, you ask? We own the night. This show is copyrighted Spaced Out Radio, SR Media Ventures Limited. It has been a pleasure serving you and continuing to serve you as your host. I am Mr. Rob G. This is the After Hours radio show. And to all you space travelers out there, don't worry, it's not a goodbye nor farewell. However, you can best believe as we go off air for the night, we'll be back doing the same thing. Big time, next time. See you back here. Have a great rest of your night, guys. Take care. All right, we are clear, guys. We are clear, and we're going to go ahead and get right up out of here tonight, guys. I do appreciate you coming on in. Enjoy your time off. Disconnect from the UFO subject if you can for the next week. There's nothing on the horizon that I can see. Try to disconnect or maybe not, go as hard. That way, I think when we come back, there'll be a absence. What do you call that? A love absence, or absence makes the heart grow fonder is essentially what I'm trying to say. So take some time off, kick back, and we will be back airing Spaced Out Radio maybe next weekend, but for sure next Monday. Outside of that, have a great rest of your night, guys. Talk to you soon. We want retribution. That's how we're going to get out of here. Until I see you again, be cool. Take care.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Yeah, we ran out of patience.